Electric Cafe.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Electric Cafe. Today's album review is Charles Webster's album from 2001 called Born on the 24th of July. This came out on Peace for Our Records that year. I woke up today and I was thinking, what album should I review today? And I wanted a for sure enjoyable album, and um, I hadn't featured anything from Charles Webster on my channel, and so I thought of his debut album in this year of 2001, and this was just a regular album that was always in my CD player, always on my turntable, always featured in my lounge sets when I was DJing out at like lounges and restaurants around this time, and it just perfectly fit the mood of the type of atmosphere that I like to create when I would DJ out at certain places like early in the night. This is just a great warm up, kind of candlelight lounge at home type of record where you're just eating dinner with your lady, or chilling around the house with a glass of wine, or just relaxing and enjoying a night out, a night in. And it's just a very classy album. And it's one of those albums that you kind of give to somebody if they sort of like if they're not really into deep house, or they're not sure if they like deep house, and you want to recommend an album. So much so I had to replace this twice because I lended it to friends, and I never got it back. So it's that type of one where I had to replace it twice. Of course, I have it on vinyl, and also 2 years later, it was they did it was such a well received album, and well liked, that uh, well documented, well respected, that they even brought Charles Webster brought out a compilation of mixes, and I also have the vinyl version up there as well. And this is just an awesome remix pack as well, featuring Jimster, Detroit Escalator Company, Pepe Broddick, Ian O'Brien, Matt Jarvis, aka High Skies, who's a good friend of mine. Also Herbert, the amazing Theo Parrish, and the hilarious and funny Daniel Wang, if you know him. Just a lineup of really classy producers. Like if you're into deep house music, especially around this time, and you took a collection of 5 to 10 classy deep house producers, man, I don't think there's anybody who wouldn't come up with many of those names: Theo Parrish, Herbert, Charles Webster, Pepe Braddock. I mean, Jimster. I mean, it's just some fantastic names, and to have all of those people on a compilation is just amazing. I first heard a track by Charles Webster back in 1993 on this compilation right here called the Chill Out compilation, which is very impactful for me at the time. There was a track he had on here called Venus by Sign. And so I started, going into record stores looking for Sign because I loved the Venus track so much. And right around that time, I started to hear or follow some of the first Time records, which Time was a house label and progressive house before Emit came out, which was the side label of it, or sister label of it. So I picked up Round and Round by Sign, and I think there was one other EP he did under Sign as well. I also have the CD. I have quite a few Charles Webster records back in the days, especially in the 90s. And so I started to follow him, and then he came out. He had a couple tracks on Emit from Sign, and then around '94, I got wind that he was also doing music under uh, an, a few names called Love from San Francisco, also Presence, Symmetrics a little bit later on, Furry Freaks. So around that time of '92 to like '99, like he was doing so many great 12-inch records. Uh, Kind of my ideal tech house. Although I know he's more deep house and house, depending on the name. There is a techno feel a lot in his music, and if there was somebody that I would point to that is a really strong tech house producer who's done some of that, I could really point to a lot of Charles Webster stuff. especially like under DJ Profile, which was another a name that he recorded under, which had stuff on end recordings, which makes total sense because they were more of one of the original tech house labels. That sort of started the UK tech house sound in the mid 90s. And I was just such a huge fan up to Charles Webster up to this album. But up to this point, he still had just been bringing out 12-inch records and really hadn't done an album yet. And of course, Peace Frog at the time was a legendary album. I mean, legendary record label, known for its techno and deeper techno and ambient music and stuff like that, and kind of came out of the rave generation like 91, 92, and was very successful releasing a lot of Detroit style techno as well, and a lot of classic records from DBX to uh, Dan Curtin to John Beltran to all kinds of names. And but as sort of the 90s were coming to an end in early 2000s, a lot of these record labels like especially in UK like Warp Records and Peace Frog, they started to um, have a lot of other styles of music and sort of expand their roster and expand their sound to include different types of music, even pop and some electronic and more electronica, I should say, and drum and bass and all kinds of different styles. Like different ones were sort of evolving into, and not just UK labels, but a lot of labels were sort of influenced by a lot of the late '90s trip hop sound and down tempo and lounge sound and the evolution of house music into more deeper house and more intelligent techno as you go and sort of including a lot of different styles. And so when this came out and you first heard this was like just a smash in every single way. Uh, there's obviously you expect house music to be on here, but the mistake that a lot of house DJs or not house producers and house DJs make is when they go to make an album, it tends to sound like a compilation because they're just making house tracks and they put them into an album sort of format, but it still sounds like a collection of dance music. Like not with Charles Webster. Just like Charles Webster, I mean, he got musicians to play on it. He's doing some trip hop, a little bit of urban style, some soulful music in there. There's definitely some deep house in there and house music in there as well. But he really understands the format of making an album and not just making dance music. Like this is a different kind of format. So even though there's a lot of great deep house music on here, like he understood that this has to be something different. Like he needs to not necessarily explore new territory because this all feels like Charles Webster, but it feels like he's really expanding and maybe using a lot of his other tastes in music and creating something a little bit more. I wouldn't even say a little bit more. It's a lot more well rounded. I think the crossover appeal of this album is huge. If you're just getting into house music and or you have a friend that's not really into house music and after two three instrumental tracks they're like, where are the vocals? And you know what I mean, like that. Like this is the type of album that you say you say, here, check out this album from Charles Webster and you'll enjoy it. Like if you're into R&B, you would like this. If you're into soul music, if you're into house music, of course, if you're into trip hop, lounge music, what I mean, if you're into any kind of deeper kind of style of electronic music or just hinting at it, like hinting at liking it, this is a great album to give somebody. Um, the real instruments in here adds a definitely a classy touch. Everything in here from flute to trumpet to upright bass to saxophone to guitar. Some of the tracks definitely sound like a real drummer as well. It's not just a house album. Like he's really making a full-on album right here, and it just hits on so many levels. So what we're gonna do is play a sample of each track. After, I'll give my rating based on my ratings, which are down below in the notes. Give some of my thoughts on each song, and then at the end, we're gonna wrap it up and review the entire album and give the album a score.
You bring me inspiration. melody in a mellow sky, my sweet butterfly.
All right, so that was the first track called "Sweet Lullaby." You don't expect this track at first from a house producer. Like unless somebody tipped you off on this album, this song might throw you for a loop. This could be something like by Maxwell or some sort of R&B artist, or this almost sounds like a jazz track, like you're in a smoky lounge and they're playing like some light jazz music, and there's a couple people in the club and they're smoking cigars, and it's just like a smoky lounge, and there's a guy out there sort of doing some poetry and or talking over some lounge music. That's kind of what this sounds like. It just has that kind of uh, that kind of feel and sound. It's soulful also. Just kind of an urban down tempo lounge vibe. I really respect the production and the creativity on this track, and just to being very different than what he's done. It's not maybe my ideal style of music when I think of Charles Webster's music that I like. I tend to like his more, deeper house, of course, tech house, and then of course a lot of his ambient stuff and his ambient sounds in tracks. But this is still a classy track, and you can't help deny that it's a really good track, no matter what kind of preferences that you have. And so I give the track a six and a quarter. I definitely think it's a good track. And yeah, let's go on to track number 2 called "Ready."
This song ain't about your sex, sugar. No, no. You know it's good. Tell me about what's keeping you up at night. Why you're so misunderstood. Did you spend all your
called Ready. This album had three singles on it: Your Life, I Understand You, and then also Ready. This was the double pack. It came out the same year. It was also on single and also on CD. This is the double pack with Tommy Musto remixes, Ron Trent, and some other good ones. This was definitely a regular play for me at the time. A regular record I had playing in my lounge sets during those years. Um, the, this track features Tara Diva on vocals, which she has amazing vocals, and she's always does a great job fitting into house music. And she was a regular uh, singer that Charles Webster used throughout his career, from what I know. She did "Want Me Like Water," of course, the amazing "Soothe" track, which was one of his most famous tracks, which actually got into like John Digweed's set, like his one of his Renaissance mixes. And also Terra Diva worked with Swayzak and Pete Moss and Jimmy Van Hem and a lot of really strong producers during that time. So I have quite a few tracks with her on it, including the ones with Charles Webster. And she just graces this track like beautifully. It's just such a great atmospheric track too as well. Um, it's it's again, if you're into like R&B or you're into hip hop or you're house music or you like lounge or down tempo trip hop, you're gonna love this track. It's just a classy vocal. It's a little bit of a desert island sort of sound. Like it sounds a little bit atmospheric, like you would hear like on an island. Like it has a little bit of light sort of island production and ambient background, relaxing. Love the last minute and a half or so. Just a smooth fade, great atmosphere towards the end. Just a beautiful track, and it's really strong to go right after Sweet Butterfly into this track and kind of just lightly ramp it up into some more, maybe more rhythmic or more towards the style of what you would expect to hear from Charles Webster. And just a really classy track. And I give it 7.5 stars. Definitely think it's verging on classic, but definitely a very good track and definitely a really strong single. Let's go into track number three called B1, Be No One. All right, so that was the track called "Be No One." This is a nice break. It's kind of a dubby, a little bit atmospheric, very cool, laid back groove. It's kind of funky and tight. Really strong interlude. It's very creative and you got like the nice little gentle melody on top, and definitely more urban groove stuff on here. Just kind of blending kind of house music and a little bit more of an urban style. Sort of down tempo and a little bit of trip hop, I imagine. And really, it's probably just down tempo and house music. A lot of times I try to get very exact on subgenres, but when you hear tracks like this, you don't even really think about the genres. You just kind of think about how great the music is, and you don't really focus on the genres. But I do like to talk about what styles are being mixed and or what I feel like it is, and what's sort of influencing each other, um, and just seeing the creativity of the artist and how they blend different styles and what it sort of would be put in a category if you were to sort of critique it in a and put it into a genre. A lot of times I do that just because I try to in the back of my mind, I always have a DJ thought. So like if I'm going to play a down tempo set, well, I'm going to think about what tracks are down tempo, right? So I'm like, oh, okay, well that one has some down tempo in it. Okay, let's play B No One because that's a good interlude from like house music to a little bit of dubby style, and it's got that lounge down tempo feel. So that's why I kind of put things into subgenres and categories a lot in my mind. I don't necessarily like to classify things and pigeonhole things into a style of music like a lot of people do. And but I do it for a little bit different reasons, and it's just because I have a DJ um, a DJ thought process when playing tracks and hearing them and how I would play them into a set. But really strong track, 7 stars, another very good one. Let's go on to track number 4 called "The Gift of Freedom."
You glide respectfully around the edge, trying so carefully not to pledge your existence. Congratulations, you passed the test. Now step back and join the rest.
All right, so that was track number 4 called "The Gift of Freedom." Another more sort of down tempo beat on this one, and another really great vocalist appearance. That's one thing that really you think about. You think about the music, obviously, in this album, but then the more you listen to this album and the more it grows on you over time, and you just keep going back to it, you're just amazed how many fantastic vocal performances on there from different artists. There must be 7 or 8 different vocalists on this album, and everyone does a really solid job on here, and this is another one. Definitely a smooth track. It's verging on trip hop, maybe a little bit of a Massive Attack feel on here, or some kind of trip hop artist. Um, it's definitely a track you can sort of kick back to and lounge out to, and just a very smooth track. Doesn't really, go out of the sweet spot, and that's perfectly fine with me. And that's kind of what lounge music does. It's not necessarily going to do anything way off the beaten track, but it's definitely going to be nice and clean and smooth and give you all the style that you want, and all that kind of laid back, relaxing vibes that you look for in a nice kind of urban, down tempo, a little bit of house beat. Really nice. 6.5 stars. Another really strong track. Let's go on to track number 5 called Fox Soup.
Do what you have to do.
All right, so that was track number 5 called Fox Soup. This one's obviously a little bit more upbeat in the sort of broken beat, but still, very down tempo in some ways. Definitely a little bit jazzy with the trumpet and just the flow of the track. A little bit more of an experimental jazz track. I really like the piano. The piano really changes the momentum of the track. It almost becomes like an uplifting melody for a second, and then just sort of uh, becomes a little bit more minimal and just kind of fades out in a very jazz way. It's a very very good track, and it's definitely a track that kind of sneaks up on you after multiple plays, and it's a nice kind of break in the middle of the album, from the first half to the second half, and really uh, is a very poignant piece, and the way it kind of at the end it feels like a Steve Reich track, or just kind of a minimalistic jazz kind of track where um, just the piano is just kind of pinging out, and just kind of beautiful notes. It reminds me a lot of like, I don't know, maybe like Keith Jarrett or something like that. There's just some like notes in there like Steve Reich or something like that. Just very kind of minimalistic structure to the sort of um, jazz sound in here. Um, Strong track though, 6.75 stars, right on the edge of a very good track. Um, yeah, let's go on to the next track called Your Life, which was the first single from the album.
When I look at your life, it's nothing like my life. All the joy, optimism, and glee. When I look at your life, similar to my life. All the pain, misery, and greed.
so that was track number 6 called Your Life. This was a single. Again, another catchy vocal, another strong vocal performance. Soulful. Bass line is great in this. Super deep. A bit jazzy in here also, down tempo, nice mix. Kind of like the organ sound is really nice. I think it's an organ. There's a lot of times where I talk about like when when certain producers can make machines cry or make machines feel human and so almost like so emotional that it sounds like it just gives so much personality to the music. Like this song almost it's very emotional, and the sort of the melody that sort of that comes out towards the end is very what I kind of described. Like it sounds like machines are crying. Like there's a lot of great producers in deeper house music and ambient techno. I can think of like Norkin does a great job of this. A lot of the deeper IDM artists do this as well as, and some of the deep house producers do this as well. But a lot of them are more in the ambient techno. I think of like As One and Future Beat Alliance or D5 on Delson Records does a great job of this. CIM does a fantastic job of this. John Tejada, um, B12, the amazing B12 does a great job of this. Um, yeah, a lot of my favorite ambient techno artists do a great job of this style of what I feel like is like an emotional dystopian Detroit style of ambient and melodic music in kind of a futuristic techno atmosphere. And it's really just I guess it really is just like ambient Detroit soul music um, and just there's such emotion in this track, and I love it. My favorite track so far on this album, 7 3/4 stars, really strong rating, right on the verge of a classic. Just love this track, 7.5 stars. Or sorry, 7 3/4 stars. All right, let's go on to track number 7 called "Forget the Past."
Forget the past. Should be in the moment more. And believe in nothing.
right, that was track number 7 called Forget the Past. Love the beat on this one. A little bit dubby. The keys are magical. Vocal is really sexy, smooth. Love the twinkling melody over the keyboard washes, which is really nice. It has a little bit of an aquatic sound to it, which is really cool. But still a little bit jazzy and deep house in there. The bass line is sick. It's really an important piece of the track. The intricate percussion is really creative and sort of some dubby notes in there and some sort of like they're almost melodic sort of percussion parts that sort of add to the pace of the track as it sort of evolves subliminally in a way and kind of minimalistic a little bit. So smooth, and I love how the atmosphere swells almost halfway through, and it just kind of drifts off from there. It's just such a smooth track, such a classy track, classic. One of my favorite Charles Webster tracks of all time. Super strong score of 8 3/4 stars. Verging on legendary track. This is a classic track for sure in every definition for me. But it's verging on a legendary track for sure. Anything I give I rarely give nines out, and this one is right on the verge of that. So you can understand my excitement with the score and yeah, just love this track and it's funny because I'm rating this for the first time, and this is a classic album for me in a lot of ways. And but things are different when you actually have to critique it and score it. And I'm still not sure if this will be my favorite song on the album, but it's going to be very close. And because this album, the second half, I like the second half of this album even better than the first half. But let's go on to track number 8, the single. I Understand You. So that was track number 8 called I Understand You. Here's the single right here. Definitely another one that got a lot of play when this came out. It's a great lounge track, light house track as well. Gotta love the piano. The vocal is great too, and the way it works, and the samples of the way Charles uses the vocal is great. Just everything works really well. Such a smooth track. This one's more in the deep house groove, a little bit more of a 4/4 flow for the most part. Again, classy track, really great tracks. 7.5 stars. Another really strong track. Let's go on. Let's go on to track number 9 called "I'm Falling."
Every day is harder without you. What is life? What is life? It's a shade of blue. When I feel alone, I think of you. I'm falling, and I'm calling. I'm falling. Can you help? 'Cause I'm falling. You're still here in my mind. It's hard to lose visions of us loving. You feel it too. I'll describe, I may describe deep love for you. But when I feel this heartache, it's just not true. I'm falling, and I'm calling. I'm falling. Can you help? 'Cause I'm falling. I'm falling. I'm falling.
All right, so that was track number 9 called "I'm Falling." This is definitely one of the deepest tracks for me on here. The way it expands toward the end is great. I love the guitar in here. Just a little acoustic guitar plucking along is a really nice touch. One of my favorite vocals on this album. It almost, production wise and the vocals, almost sounds like a Larry Heard track. It definitely gives off that kind of mid 90s to early 2000 Larry Heard style that I'm a big fan of as well. The end rhythm that comes out, it goes into a little bit more of a techno feel. Almost reminds me of Manuel Gotching's E2 E4. Carl Craig would be a great person to remix this track. It definitely has that kind of incognito Carl Craig sort of techno rhythm kind of evolving out of it. It's a great touch. The peak of the track is great with the vocals saying "I'm falling" and it's sort of rising towards the end is a really nice touch. Great conclusion to the track. Classic track. 8 stars. So far, my second favorite track on the album. Just a beautiful track and definitely probably the deepest track on here for me. And it almost feels like 2 parts because you got the intro and it's very in line with the album, and the second part really kind of takes it to a little bit more of an experimental and techno feel and maybe even a little bit more underground feel, and the melody comes out. Just really strong track, great production. 8 stars out of 10, great stuff. Let's go on to the last track called "Put Your Hurt Aside." So that was the last track called Put Your Hurt Aside. Really nice laid back conclusion to the album. This track is a bit underrated. I know a lot of times when I would play this album and I would sort of get to the end, sometimes it's hard to listen to an hour long, even of the same artist, sometimes when you have so much music. And a lot of times after such a great um, peak of the last album through the last few tracks, sometimes I don't get a chance to play this track a lot because, for whatever reason, I just kind of get to the end and don't play it. And I always forget how nice this track is. Just love the aquatic sound, the island percussion, almost the water drums, and just the kind of nice atmosphere. Subtle voices in here, is a great touch as well. Really strong track as well. I give it 6 3/4 stars. Right on the high side of a good track, verging on very good. Another really strong track, though, really in all. So let's go on to my overall thoughts of the album. All right, so when I add up my stars for the entire album, it comes to a 72 3/4 stars rating, which is basically a 72 out of 100, which is a very good album. But when I think of my bonus score that I give for albums at the end, when I take into account everything about the album, I decide whether I want to add or maybe possibly subtract a few points for certain things. And with this track, I feel like the sum of the album is even better than the parts of the songs themselves. The production is very strong, creativity, the depth on here, and then you factor in the fantastic vocal appearances on here, and they're just so key to the album, and they're so successful. I give the for all those reasons and the songs themselves, and again the sum of the parts, I give an extra 5 1/4 points to the album out of a possible 10 points, and bring it the score at a 78 out of a 10 on the high side of very good, verging on classic. Like when I get into the eights, that's a classic album of all time, and I don't lightly give that score. This is right there. 25, basically 24, 25 years later, um, this album has stood the test of time. And possibly in another 25 years, I would even probably push this into maybe even another 10, 15 years, I could push this into probably a low 80 score easily. This is right on the borderline of a classic album, and just a great example of Charles Webster's amazing production, the depth, the creativity on here, the balance of styles in here, the emotional vocals in here, just some great of additional real instruments as well. Fantastic lounge album, trip hop, whatever you want to call it, house track, just hits on all categories, hits all the high points for me when I look for a really classy deep house album. And this album nails it. Charles Webster continues to amaze me to this day, and there's not a lot of producers in dance music and in house music that I've been following for over 30 years now. Charles Webster is one who's consistently um, impressing me to this day, and I'll always follow his music. Probably, if I had to say, one of my top 10 deep house producers of all time, in the likes of Larry Heard and other people. Just a fantastic producer. But yeah, that's my overall thoughts. A 78 out of 100 for Born on the 24th of July on Peace Rod Records, 2001, by the amazing Charles Webster. All right, thanks for tuning in to Electric Cafe. I appreciate it. Have a good day.